With the power to influence people, brands, and culture, does the advertising industry have a responsibility to take a stand and act on climate change? If we need to move towards a carbon-neutral future and reduce our culture of overconsumption, how will this affect brands and their advertisers? Is there opportunity to repurpose creative talent for the greater good? To unite financial goals with a sustainable future? On the 1st of May 2019, the UK Parliament declared a climate emergency. Scientists have been ringing the alarm bells for years, but the act was finally provoked by the climate activist group Extinction Rebellion, as they brought London to a halt and demanded the government tell the truth. The advertising industry has also been targeted by the group. Several members disrupted the Cannes Lions Festival, and a letter was published urging senior advertising executives to declare a climate and ecological emergency and act accordingly.
I think what we're trying to do is ask businesses to go, right, how are you going to change?
This is William Skeeping from Extinction Rebellion and co-editor of the handbook This Is Not a Drill. So why are you targeting the advertising industry in particular?
Well, we're kind of not just targeting the advertising industry. We're also going after a sort of number of industries, including fashion, places where there's an opportunity for an industry to speak to a massive audience, people who have influence over the way behavior and culture and global attitudes can be shifted. So fashion, celebrity, advertising, those kind of communication-focused media industries. But they're also ones that drive biodiversity loss by encouraging absolute hyper-consumption and high-carbon lifestyles and celebrating that, and completely unnecessary activities which are genuinely destroying the planet. If the fashion industry grows at the rate it's growing at the moment, that alone will wipe out all life on this planet. Yeah. And the advertising industry thinks of itself as doing good. It frequently talks about brand purpose, about how brands can be better, about the concerns of Generation Z, and yet simultaneously is flogging and encouraging massive hyperconsumption that's completely unnecessary. And there is an effect of that, and it is felt frequently in the majority world. And while it's still talking about it's a kind of cognitive dissonance, it's about, and there's greenwashing involved, and there's still advertising fossil fuel companies, and it's just time we need to sort this out in a big way. If that's an industry that can speak about creativity and it can speak about culture, then it needs to get on board very quickly with this extremely urgent problem.
I can sort of imagine it being a little bit conflicting from their point of view if they're trying to help a brand sell their product, and that's where they make a living.
Yeah, and I think we're basically, as Extinction Rebellion, we're trying to challenge business as usual. Mm-hmm. Business as usual is going to kill us all. If we continue on this trajectory, it's all over. So I think what we're trying to do is ask businesses to go, right, how are you going to change?
What would you like big advertising agencies to do? Would you like them to set up their own campaigns? Or
first thing they can do is speak to their brands and work out how they can explain to them that those coveted Gen Z audiences that they've all been going after for years, this is, if they don't do something now to act to help mitigate the worst effects of the climate and ecological emergency, those Gen Z audiences will either be dead or never forgive them. So it's really important that they get that message across. The first thing they can do on a kind of proactive level is to tell the truth about this crisis. And the first thing they need to do is to get their head around it themselves. And I think there's always that resistance, almost a resistance internally, for them to recognize how bad this has got and that they play a part in that process. And look, in the West, we all play a part in that process. No one is too saintly. Like, we've all flown, most of us, eat meat. We've all got bad habits. We drive cars. We're not going to go back to the Stone Age right now immediately, and that's not something we're asking anyone to do. But we are asking people to address this on a kind of emotional level.
So effectively, you would like everyone to become activists?
I think everyone's going to have to become they're going to have to take a stand. We don't need everyone on board. We just need key people to really get their head around this and to recognize what's going on. And that is, to me, like being at the forefront of this global conversation. And advertising agencies, that is their currency, is being like, we understand what's happening in culture. We understand what's happening on the streets. Well, guess what, guys? There's like 10,000 people being arrested. There's thousands of people being, going out and protesting. The kids are all out there. People are being murdered in the global south. Like this is happening now. This is a big change. The conversation is changing rapidly. Don't get left behind. We're offering unparalleled access to help be a part of this process. And yet, they're still umming and erring. This just needs to be like, are you with it? Like, are you getting this? And if you're not getting it, don't claim to be at the front line of understanding culture and what's going on in the world, because you're lying to yourselves.
What would you personally like to see change in the next few years?
Well, I think we're living in a world in which, if you look at America, I think lots of people's personal identity is now built around the brands they consume, rather than, any other kind of characteristics. Yeah. And I think that's a really disturbing place. But it also, and I'm not saying anyone's immune to this, like I'm a Nike guy, not an Adidas trainer wearer, I'm guilty as charged, right? Yeah. I've got an Apple Mac, not a PC, we're all thinking slightly in these brand terms and our consumption terms. And the thing is that if those are the things, the levers that help decide what we are, then those brands need to help guide those people, those audiences who are defined by them, into these better spaces. And that's just a really something that a government can't do. A government can legislate to demand change, but that can be a negative, whereas a brand can frame this in a positive way. So I think the one thing that brands have that governments don't have is this international reach. That if Apple gets their head around it and goes, right, fuck it, we've got to do something big time. We've got $1 trillion in cash and we have access to everyone's desktops and everyone's business. And we are in every home and every device across the planet, and we feel there's something that can be done that's drastic, then that's something that no government in the world can do. And they can make it aspirational and desirable. That's something a government, can appear to be boring and dull and annoying. This is let's make this sexy. Let's make this something we all want to get behind. And it's the same whether you're, their business is going to change. All businesses are going to change. So why not use this as a moment to be on the right side of history? And that is something that brands can be, because governments frequently aren't.
What do advertisers think about this? Do they care? And if so, what do they feel is in their remit to do about it?
Hi, I'm Ian Tate, the Executive Creative Director of Wieden & Kennedy London. From the Extinction Rebellion email, all the stuff, it's very true. We've been a massive accelerant in that culture of people wanting the new thing and desiring ever more stuff. And, advertising has been a great kind of greaser of the wheels of the economy that kind of makes that happen. So I think, a lot of us feel that very instinctively now and go, okay, there's a bunch of things happening in the world, whether it's from, a move towards a simpler way of living to other things. There's a bunch of stuff happening where you go, okay, if we join all of these pieces together, maybe there is a different kind of lifestyle for people to aspire to, and how can we start to normalize some of that through the things that we do? Are there bigger, more ambitious things than that we should start to kind of get behind?
That's the interesting part. Yeah. So what role can you have?
I think it is around storytelling, but I think it's also around imagination, and it's about imagining what a different future can look like and helping big companies to understand that maybe the highly resource intensive past that they've had needs to shift into a more experience based. I don't think at the moment we're saying to people that there isn't going to be people making money and people having jobs anymore. It's just that you have to be much more thoughtful about what those things are. And I think for me, that's the bit that gets me really excited, is how can we work with some of our biggest, best, most trusted clients to go, okay, in 5 years' time, in 10 years' time, if we're heading for, net zero, what kind of business could you still have? And how can we help you to sort of imagine that and to almost build some of the assets that help you to describe that thing. And then I think it is, as much as possible for me anyway, trying to encourage us to be showing, advertising, lifestyles, products, things that are the least damaging and the most forward-looking of the types of things that we could be doing. My dilemma here is like, okay, so we can do all these things, but actually, what would it take to make this kind of the driving kind of force behind the agency? What would it take to make almost like a new era of creativity and kind of slightly more conscious consumption? Like, what would that look like? Like, what is our role in that, and how can we help the brands that we work with to be the kinds of brands that should survive going forward, rather than the ones that are being sort of propped up?
It's a complicated dilemma that's not easily solved by any one individual. Is there a way for brands to reconcile their business goals with wider social and environmental purposes? Thomas Kolster, an ex-Hatman and jury member at the Cannes Lions Festival, thinks so.
What you gotta do is you gotta give a damn, but you gotta choose brands that give a damn, okay? And it's not enough to choose a brand that recycles coffee cups, because right now, while brands are recycling coffee cups, Elon Musk is recycling space rockets. Isn't that amazing? And what he's done to the electric vehicle, you all know the Tesla, right? Yeah. Right now, he's done solar panels that's integrated into the roof because he knows we're lazy. Isn't that great? Another guy who cares a lot is a guy called Bas van Apple. And all of you have iPhones. I can see quite a few of you sitting with your iPhones in your hands. But what you might not know is that iPhone contains a lot of conflict minerals. A lot of them comes from a mine a couple of thousand kilometers south in Congo. So he wanted to change something. And he created something called Fair Phone, a phone made of conflict-free minerals. And even before the phone was launched, there was a massive following. So those are some of the passionate guys. And even big corporations like Unilever. The CEO of Unilever talks about this, how they have an opportunity to reinvent consumption. So you've got to make up your mind, who is it that you want to support?
The big question is probably, how do you create that step change? And for me, it's really simple. It needs to begin with putting people first. And one simple question you can ask yourself is, who can you help people become, and when can you enable that change to happen? Because by the end of the day, we know people want to live more sustainably, and if you're the brand that can help them on that journey, it's not just some things that's a claim in an advert or something that's written somewhere in a boardroom, but it's actually something that people can feel, a tangible difference, a shift in mindset that people can feel, and I'm sure that they'll be thankful for that.
Thank you for watching. If you have any suggestions of topics you'd like us to cover, let us know in the comments. See you in the next video.